back to the 90s!
Nick, 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 Nick.
Oh, here goes.
I'm a tit, he's a tit, she's a tit, we're all tit, I'm a tit, he's a tit, she's a tit, we're all tit.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Nostalgia. Now this is a top 10 favourites list I should have done years ago, but for whatever reason, I just never got around to it. And with the release of Inside Out 2 in cinemas, and the great reaction we had to our Toy Story Unpopular Opinions video that we put up earlier this week, I just couldn't put it off any longer. We're going to do top 10 favourite Pixar films. Pixar changed the film industry, and that's not an exaggeration. They changed the way the animated films were made. Now these stories were gut-punching. These were emotional, sorrow, loss, redemption, and countless other complex emotions. Now animated films were not just kids' films. These were pieces of art. So let's get into it together. Let's count down our top 10 favourite Pixar movies. Let's remember we say top 10 favourites, not top 10 best, not top 10 greatest. Get in the comments if you don't agree. Let us know your favourites. Get the tissues ready. This is going to get emotional. Top 10 favourite Pixar films. Let's get it. God, we are starting off super strong with Toy Story 3. Now this list, it could be a pissing contest for which film caused me the most emotional damage and screwed me up the most. And let me tell you, Toy Story 3 sure as hell did that. But Toy Story 3 messed me up emotionally on a different level. It was the first Pixar film I saw after I became a dad. My eldest daughter was born the same year Toy Story 3 came out, and it makes me wonder, that scene when Andy hands the toys over to Bonnie, did that scene hit me so hard because now I was a dad and I was handing over my childhood to my kids? Maybe I'm just reading too much into it. There is so much that I love about Toy Story 3. There's incredible new characters like Ken makes his first appearance in Toy Story 3. Lotso Hugging Bear, he could be one of the best Toy Story villains of all time. And those emotional scenes, they had us all crying. Don't try and act tough now. When you thought those toys were going into the incinerator, you wept. You have to admit, you wept. And the main reason why Toy Story 3 makes my top 10 is it understood its audience. We were all kids when we grew up watching Toy Story in 1996, but now we were growing up like Andy. And like Andy, we still had these attachments to our youth, but in order to grow, we have to move on. And this is only number 10 in the list. Wow. A Bug's Life. Oh man, this is so underrated. I bloody love A Bug's Life. I feel bad for this film. Like I said, it's underrated. It had the hardest job in animation history. It had to follow Toy Story, and that's practically impossible. On its own, A Bug's Life completely deserves to be in our top 10. It's got a great story, great lead. We all love Flick, but it's the side characters. There are so many amazing side characters in this film. Heimlich, Dot, Francis, Slim, Rosie, P.T. Flea, and my personal favourites, I love Tuck and Roll. And a film, especially an animated film, is only as good as its villain. And Hopper, voiced by Kevin Spacey, is Pixar doing villains at its peak. I friggin' hated Hopper. He was so evil, I couldn't stand him.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
I knew it. I knowed I made a good choice.
Now, I don't get all the hate that comes Cars' way. It's one of my favourites. The story of the hotshot race car forced to slow down and appreciate the simpler things in life. It's a classic story. All these characters in Radiator Springs that you fall in love with immediately. Lightning McQueen, Doc Hudson, Sally, you got Mac, Luigi, Fillmore, and of course, my guy, Mater. I am obsessed with Mater. He might be one of the side characters, but for me, he's one of my favourite Pixar characters of all time. Another thing that Cars has going for it, it has one of the best soundtracks of any Pixar film. I have so many of these songs on my Spotify. Rio Gone by Sheryl Crow, Route 66 by John Mayer, Our Town by James Taylor. And you can all hate on Cars all you want, but I guarantee you, if I put on Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts on the radio, you are all singing along. Life is a highway. That is an absolute tune. Cars could be the most underrated of all the Pixar films. I love this film.
Speed. I am speed.
They're experts, Bob.
Now, I spoke previously about how much I love the film Incredibles in our top 10 favourite superhero films. But it has to be said, Incredibles is so many things. It's a fantastic animated film. It's a fantastic family film. It's a fantastic comedy. It's a fantastic superhero film. It's just fantastic. Incredibles is so well written. It's so clever, so witty, and it doesn't even need to be, but it just is. And we have to give a shout out to Jason Lee as Syndrome. In a film full of superheroes, the villain Syndrome steals the show. He is quality. It was such a great idea to show us the aftermath of what happens after the crime fighting, the lawsuits, the court cases, the home life of the supers.
We are talking about the greater good.
Oh my god, it's Up. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this section without crying. Now, this might sound a bit controversial, but Up was the only great Pixar film for like a 10-year stretch. Following Up, there was a run of films. There was Toy Story 3, Cars 2, Brave, Monsters University, Inside Out, The Good Dinosaur, Finding Dory, Cars 3. Now, I'm not saying these films are bad. I like these films, but they are not Pixar level great. We have come to expect better. It's almost like Pixar had used everything they had for Up and they had just burnt out. And you can see why. Up has everything you expect from a great Pixar film. Deep characters, an exciting adventure story, a mismatched pair who bond and become inseparable by the end. And of course, it had us in tears. That opening scene in Up could be the greatest 10 minutes of film, not just in Pixar, ever produced. Not a single word is said in those 10 minutes, but you go through every emotion in your body in those 10 minutes. You get to see Carl and Ellie's story, bonding as kids, getting married, the misfortune of not being able to have kids of their own, and then Ellie's death, all in 10 minutes. It is a perfect 10 minutes.
Thing back where it came from, or so help me. Get that thing away from me, you guys. Put that thing back where it came from, or I'll poke myself in the eye.
I remember exactly where I was when I first saw Monsters Inc. because it was my first weekend in my first flat at the age of 16. I didn't have any furniture, I was sitting on the floor, and I wasn't throwing wild parties or anything like that. I went down to Blockbuster and I got Monsters Inc. Monsters Inc. is Pixar hitting its stride. They were peaking because now animation and technology had finally reached that point where anything was possible. And you can see it perfectly when you look at something like Sully's Fur in Monsters Inc. The voice acting in Monsters Inc. might just be my favourite of any animated film. I grew up loving John Goodman in the likes of Roseanne and Flintstones and Billy Crystal. Oh man, I love Billy Crystal in things like City Slickers and Princess Bride. They were perfect together. Billy Crystal, John Goodman, perfect chemistry. And oh my god, I have to mention Boo. She is so freaking adorable. I have a huge tattoo of Boo and Sully on my forearm. I love Boo. She's friggin' adorable.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
Okay, so I feel like I'm gonna have to go to bat here for Coco, because when I do my homework, no one else has Coco this high up on their Pixar list. Maybe it's the fact that people think that Coco is a Disney film, not a Pixar film, but it is. Coco is a Pixar film, and it's one of the better ones. And like I mentioned earlier, after the release of Up, Pixar was not struggling. I wouldn't say struggling, but they certainly were not hitting that height that we knew that they could. And then in 2017, Coco come out, and I was blown away. The animation in Coco is truly breathtaking, and the musical numbers are arguably the best in any Pixar film. Un Poco Loco, The World is My Familia, Proud Corazon. And here we go again, I'm going to get emotional, I can feel the lump coming up in my throat, but that scene where Miguel sings Remember Me to Mama Coco, she remembers her papa, and I have never cried so much in a film as I did watching that, and that's the honest truth. My dad had died 2 days before this film came out, and obviously my daughters wanted to go watch it because, you know, it's the new Pixar film, so I thought I could use the distraction, let's go to the cinema, and I watched Coco, and I cried my eyes out at that scene. We all did, actually, everybody cried at that scene, but I was in floods of tears. It was so therapeutic, and you know what? It was exactly what I needed. Sometimes you need to have a good cry and let things out of your system, and I did it in the middle of the cinema with everybody staring at me. It was pretty goddamn embarrassing, but yeah, that's exactly what this film is about. It's okay to feel sad and emotions, but the way that you honour people who've gone and are no longer with us is you remember them.
You see the hat? I am Mrs. Nesbit.
There is no way that you can understate the importance and the impact that Toy Story had. Without Toy Story, none of these films we're talking about would have been possible. The fact that John Lasseter got fired by Disney as an animator, and then he had to team up with Steve Jobs and form Pixar, in that Toy Story was the first film that they released, shit, that should be made into its own film. I was there, I lived through some of the biggest releases of the 90s. I saw Jurassic Park, Phantom Menace, Titanic, all the big ones. But that summer in 1996, every kid in the world went Toy Story nuts. It played in the cinema for like a whole year. Anytime in 1996 someone had a birthday, we went for a Pizza Hut and then we went to watch Toy Story at the cinema. It was like the gospel. And the toy line was insane. Every kid had Woody, Buzz, the box of Army figures, the RC, the Slinky Dog, Rex, Tatohead. It was insane, the toy line. And I've got to give a shout out to the computer games as well. Toy Story on the Mega Drive was epic. The OG original Toy Story will be number one in most people's lists, especially 90s kids. And I completely get why. If you haven't already, when you get time after this, go watch the Unpopular Opinions video on Nostalgia, where we say Toy Story 2 is the best Toy Story film. And this, it was nearly my favourite Pixar film of all time. Everything that you love about the films that we've talked about so far, you can find that in Toy Story 2. If you want a great villain like Syndrome in Incredibles, for example, the Chicken Man from Al's Toy Barn and Stinky Pete the Prospector, they are some of the biggest arseholes in all animated film history. If you want beautiful animation like in Coco, that opening scene in Toy Story 2 where Rex is playing the Buzz Lightyear game, that is perfect animation. Do you want side characters that can outshine the main ones like in Bug's Life? Well, in Toy Story 2, the likes of Slinky, Tatohead, Rex, they get all the laughs and they get time to shine. The music in Coco and Cars is outstanding, but Jessie's song in Toy Story 2, that might just be the best song in animated film history. And while we are talking about Jesse's song, films like Coco, Toy Story 3, Up, they had us in tears. But that scene where Jesse gets left by the side of the road and that music plays, it broke us, and we still have not recovered to this day. I will die on this hill and I will continue to preach the word that Toy Story 2 is the best Toy Story film by a mile. And it was nearly my favourite Pixar film of all of them. Nearly. I love all of these films. They all hold a special place in my heart. But Wally stands out at the top of my list as it is not like any other Pixar film. Hell, I don't think it's like any other film ever made. Wally is a silent movie romance between two robots set in an apocalyptic wasteland like a Mad Max film that then transitions into a sci-fi adventure in space that feels like Blake 7 or Logan's Run or something. I would have loved to have been in the room when they pitched that to Disney and Pixar. I truly love Wally with all of my heart. For me, it is a perfect film, and I do not say that often. Wally is not a Pixar film. It's not an animated film. It's not a kid's film. Wally is a masterpiece, and it is a perfect example of what cinema can be when the right people at the right studio are given the freedom to make great films. Wally is my all-time favourite Pixar film, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, but I would not rule it out. If Pixar has shown us anything recently, it's that they can still deliver. With recent releases like Elemental and Soul and Onward, Pixar have not lost their touch. They are still the gods of telling emotional, personal, and awe-inspiring stories through the art of animation. And see, I told you getting through this list was gonna be an emotional roller coaster. But what do you expect? It's Pixar. But now it's your turn. This is top 10 favourites. You have to get in the comments and let us know your favourites. I didn't even get to mention the likes of Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, Brave, Inside Out. If I missed your favourites, get in the comments and let us know. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Peace out.
Who's the best in every way and wants to sing a song to sing? Who's your friend who likes to play? Bing, bong, bing, bong.